Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast today. I'm joined with Clive Maloney. Welcome, Clive.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming down, Clive. Just to give you a bit of context around Clive and what he does, you've got a lot going on, so I'm really excited about chatting to you today. Business owner, sales trainer, business coach, social selling expert, host your own podcast as well. Get Real About Business, which I've listened to a couple of episodes, Clive, and it's really good stuff. And yeah, you've got a lot going on there, so really looking forward to having insight into business with you today and hearing what you've got to say. But thanks for coming down.
No, it's my pleasure. It's great to be here to chat with you.
Yeah. Anything you want to add about yourself and what you've done?
I think that's way too much about me. Let's get on to talk about you and what the audience wants to hear.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, what was your first job after college and uni?
Well, do you know what? I was not somebody who always knew what they wanted to do as a child. So for me, my first job was to go and get a job in a nursing home. So I needed something. At that time, I was in St John Ambulance, and so it was just a case of get a job, and nursing home was what it was. And 10 years in adult social care after that. But the thing that was always the driver for me was training, and that was the thread that sort of went on from the age of 14 throughout my career, really.
So, because we've obviously briefly chatted, and I've seen some of the stuff you do, and you've got a real passion about obviously business and helping people and the way you operate. Do you feel that human interaction and what you did over those 10 years has really sort of shaped you?
That's a really interesting question, because yes, fundamentally, I think what it is about is it's all about connection with people. And we think about business as a series of strategies and operations and bringing the money in. And essentially, it all boils down to people and how you connect with people and how you influence people. And, for me, that 10 years that I spent in adult social care set my values as a human being. And it got me to question a lot of who I was and what was important. And that's very much shaped how I interact with people, how I deal with clients, how I deal with anybody in day-to-day life. Yeah,
it's great, and I think that's evident, And the other thing, so getting into business, at what stage did you want to set up on my own? Because the reason I ask is I'm looking at your profile, 20 years you worked for people and doing stuff, and then obviously that big shift and to go and do it for yourself. Was there a point, you remember when it happened?
Yeah, I think there is always a point when people decide they're going to sack the boss and go out and create their own business, because there's very few people who start out wanting to be an entrepreneur. Usually what tends to happen is that you start out in a business doing something, and you say, well, I'll sack the boss and I'll do what I'm doing now for somebody else. And for me, it was probably about maybe 14 years into working at Essex County Council. I'd done a lot of different things, and at that time I was leading the council's corporate learning development service. So we were delivering coaching and training to about 40,000 people in areas of leadership, personal effectiveness, IT, all kinds of things. But there was a restructure at that time, and which is quite common actually for part of a big organisation. But there was a restructure at that time, and I saw people being treated in ways that I didn't think were set with my values, and there were things going on that I wasn't happy with, and for me that was the push, because I thought about for quite a few years that like maybe I set out run my own sort of freelance training business. But I think the thing is, when you're in a contract and you've got that money coming in on a day-to-day basis, it's a lot easier to stay. But I think for me that friction there that I experienced, it's funny we were talking about friction before we started, the friction there that I experienced at that time was enough for me to realise, look, if I stay here, I'm going to be part of the problem. And I don't want to be one of those people who just moans and complains about their job. So that was the catalyst. And I was fortunate at the time because there was an opportunity to take a sideways step into an e-learning and regulatory position. So I brought e-learning to the council, and we did some really good projects for the first year or two, but I knew that role would be made redundant. And so, I thought it'd be a year, it'd come to sort of a little shy of 2 years in that role. And that was the thing that gave me the exit, because I got a little bit of redundancy. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to start my business. And I stepped out there and did the crazy thing of starting a business.
Yeah, I know, but I love it. I love having the guests on so far I've had on, and just chatting, not doing the podcast, but getting our business owners I have as clients here, or just chatting to people. Everyone has a story. There's and you know what? Sometimes it's the it's a serendipity moment that happens a lot, you know, where something happens that leads you to do something that you may wouldn't have done before, and then suddenly it's the best thing that you've ever done. For example, you're doing this job, you could see that, you know, there was a bit of friction, so it took a bit of redundancy, and it gave you the leap to go into your own business, and seeing the stuff you've done in the short space I've known you and what I've watched and delivery and what people say about you was a good decision. But it's that moment, isn't it? It's that there's always someone in time, and everyone I've chatted to, there is a moment or something's happened that's led that.
There is, and usually that's a high octane moment when something's like deeply distressing, or there's something very compelling to make that change. Because I think the thing is, we are inherently lazy creatures. The fact is that we will always do the thing that takes the least effort to get immediate reward, rather than the bigger reward that's long term. And so, you know, that's the reason why it took me several years to get to that point in which, well, you know, I will go out on my own and I'll take that risk. And
there we are, risk history. There you go. Troy, jumping ahead, I want it, but something you've mentioned about long term and results. So, and it's good hearing you say that, and I'll give you some context. So, at the gym here, a lot of the clients we work with, we talk about long-term approach to things, lifestyle transformation. Fitness industry is quite faddy, so there's quick fixes. And everyone's in a rush to get somewhere quick. There is a longer process. You saying long-term approach to get there. Do you find that's been really important to you, having that long-term approach to things in your business? And is it almost as well, is it a way that you work with people yourself, that you try and look at it over a longer period?
I think you have to, and you know, I've learned the hard way. So when I started my business, it was corporate coaching and training, and so I was working with bigger companies. And then, you know, in about 2 years sort of down the line, I realised that actually small businesses were my passion were. And at that time, part of the thing was the fact that I wasn't very good at sales, and so I wasn't, you know, getting a lot of opportunity. And what happened was that a lot of people saying, "Oh, do this, do that, try this, try that." And so what I ended up doing was trying a lot of things and then investing a lot of time and money and effort into things that never actually materialised. And they were all about making decisions in the short term for immediate gain. And so I think the thing is, what you have to do is you have to work out what your long-term plan is, what it is that you're trying to create. And then every time an opportunity comes up, because opportunities are like a sheep in wolf's clothing. So every time an opportunity comes up, you have to ask yourself, is this in alignment with where I want to get? Because otherwise what happens is we take immediate reactive decisions, and often they can take you away from where you really want to be.
Yeah, so this is something I wanted to just bring up on, actually, because you, in one of your podcasts we listened to, and it was great, you speak about goals, and you said it's the values and your whys, understand your real reason why, and fall in line with that. So if we could explore that a little bit, because I think that's talking to a lot of people, and I relate this to more in the fitness world, you know, understanding why does someone really want to get healthier? Getting through a few layers, then your reason, bang, that's your point at which now you've got a real reason. So how does that work for you? Because in terms of business, when you're working with clients, obviously it seems to be important, what you just previously mentioned.
It is. I think people talk about it in different ways, and I suppose there's three things. There's your why, there's your identity, and then there's your purpose. And I think that you're right. You've got to find the whys. You've got to find out why you're doing this. You know, what it brings to you to be fitter, to have a better business, to have better relationships. You know, what's the real motivator? And usually the why is not the surface level thing that you think it is. You have to dig to find out what it is. And I think one of the mistakes that I see a lot is people who end up borrowing other people's whys. So you see it in network marketing a lot, is that, say you're selling some healthy product, the usual thing is, or maybe even fitness, the usual thing is, well, I tried this milkshake and I lost 20 pounds and that's changed my life. And really all they're doing is reciting somebody else's why. And that might not be their reason for being in business. You've got to find the right thing for you. And I mentioned purpose as well, because I think purpose is important, is that a lot of people say to me, I'm still trying to find my purpose. Am I doing the right thing?
How do you know? How do you find that? How do you find that purpose? You work with someone, because that's it's a big one.
It is, and the thing, like, everybody's searching for find your purpose. And, you know, my answer to this is pick one, because you've got so you've got so many skills and so many talents that you could apply yourself in a lot of different areas. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I think you've only got today to make a decision. And all you've got to do is find something that you can get behind for a few years. And, the thing is, quite often when people start a business in one area, within a few years, they've usually found that they're in a slightly different niche in a few years, a few years down the line. Maybe they're still a fitness trainer, but they're doing it in a different way. And I think you have to explore things, but what you have to do is start by picking something you can get behind. Something that, that you think would be interesting and it would give you a sense of fulfillment, and then just commit to it for a few years. You don't have to commit to any longer than that.
So would you say passion is really important? If you're passionate about something, you're gonna get a better result from it?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, to be successful at anything takes repetition, it takes consistency, and it takes commitment and dedication. And it's hard to do that with something that you just can't get passionate about.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's something that I think is really important. It's an essential habit and attitude. So, talking of habits, because you started about consistency, daily habits. Again, knowing how you operate and hearing the stuff you do, it's really important to you. We spoke just very briefly off air about journaling, how important that is and stuff. And something which strikes me when I'm talking to business owners is that daily consistency, the daily habits, the journaling, the day in, day out, even which when you don't want to do something, you still do it. So I'd love to know your importance around that, and then if you can lead into like top daily habits you may have. Do you have a morning and an evening routine as well that you sort of abide by?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's two different types of habits, or certainly ways in which you should operate with habits. I think there's the habits that you develop that are meant to be unintentionally practiced. So I drove here this morning, I didn't have to think about how to drive. The selection of gears and everything else was habitual. And it was based on triggers, that were going on. So there's unintentional habits, but there's also habits that are meant to be practiced consciously. And I think it's about building a mixture of both. So, for example, one of the unintentional habits you might have is that once you've spoken to a client, if it's a business situation, when you've spoken to a client, as soon as you get in the car or as soon as you walk out of a meeting, you sit down and make a note about that interaction, so you don't forget, and you plan your next move.
So will you do that? So as soon as you finish a meeting or interaction, you write down how you were in almost your performance in that meeting.
Yeah, because if I know if I walk away, let's say I've been to a networking event and I met somebody, or I've been at a conference, met somebody who's really interesting, and I say, I'll follow up with you. If I don't do something very, very quickly, even if it's not, the full out, send them what I said I would do, but if I don't even make a note, I will forget. And so...
Human nature, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, and systems set you free. So by just having that practice of, as soon as you walk away, stop and take a couple of minutes to make a note somewhere, then, that's important. And I think that there's also the habits that you practice consciously. So one of the habits I practice consciously is how I can influence people better. And that means how I show up. And so when I'm going to a meeting, when I'm delivering training, I will consciously ask myself, what version of me do I need to be today? Who do I need to be? How can I be impactful in this meeting? And so I think that there are a number of things that you can focus on, and particularly they're behavioural based, that if you focus on those areas, then you create an impact.
Can I ask then, talk about impactful, do you have any mental preparation? Do you do any, is there any stuff you'll do? You say you're going into that meeting and you want to be the most effective for that meeting or with that client or whatever you're doing. You got any sort of mental preparation or preparation techniques?
Well, if you're going into a meeting, when I think it starts by thinking about, okay, so who is this person? Do some research. Go on their website, listen to their podcast, do whatever. Find out about that person and ask yourself, what do you think their key drivers are? What matters to them? Usually what we're doing is, particularly from a small business perspective, the thing is we spend a lot of time creating our business and working out what we want to sell and what our products are and everything else like that. So if you go in and meet somebody who might be a potential client or might not be, the usual thing is that the first thing you think about is your products and what you want to tell people and what you want to get across. So we have to step away from that, and you have to start getting curious about who it is that you're meeting with and interacting with, because all your stuff can come later, but unless you have earned the right for somebody to give you their valuable time and to hear what you've got to say, you've got to start with them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you said earlier in our chat in the podcast about, you know, you weren't good at selling, you know, when you did in the corporate sector.
That's hopeless.
No, but this is an interesting thing, and something I've learned sort of with sales, sales mastery stuff that I've been doing, and which interests me is you don't have to be doing direct selling. It's not direct selling. It is that interest in people. It's finding about them and what drives them, and people buying into that. That does sell, doesn't it? So you don't have to directly sell. So you being like that with people and interested in people is selling without it being, look, this is what I've got, these are my services.
Yeah, and selling, if you think about it, selling is just about sharing something with enthusiasm. So, you know, if you go to a restaurant and you have an amazing experience and you go back home and, you know, maybe you see your friend the next day, what you're going to do, you're going to tell them about this restaurant that you went to. Yeah. You're going to say how great the service was and everything else like that. You know, I think that you have to find the enthusiasm for it, but it's also about knowing when and how to do that and at what time. And so I think sales is all about starting conversations. You know, you meet people. It's like having a relationship when you meet someone, like a date or somebody that you're going to want to have a relationship with, and you meet them, you ask questions, you find stuff out, you show an interest. And share a little bit about who you are, but it's purely a point of connection. And then when the time's right, you ask them to do something like go for a coffee with you or have a chat. And if they say yes, then fine, then you're on to that next stage, and then you look to see what the next stage is, and you have more conversations, find stuff out. And when the time's right, you ask them to do something else. But if they say no, you don't think, well, you know, they don't like me. You just go back to having more conversations.
So with that, you know, yeah, exactly. So with that, when we're talking about relationships, you said at the start, do you think, so is it important then that you build a long-term relationship with people, even if you're not necessarily going to do business with them? Or, and do you find in your world now you're dealing with people that are too quick to get to that result and that sale? How are you seeing it, and what is possibly the right way to go in your opinion?
I think you've got to know when to move something on. Typically when we're looking to market ourselves or our business, our products, whatever, then if you look at how most people do it with all the ads and everything you're running, what you're doing is actually competing for about 3% of your ideal audience, because the vast majority of people who could benefit from what you do aren't ready for you. And about 3% of your ideal audience are actually, they have a problem that they recognise and they are ready to do something about it, and they're searching for a solution. Everybody else is not necessarily ready for that. And there'll be about 30% of your audience who you know you could help, but for some reason it will always be a no. But your job with everybody else is to recognise where they're at, to help them understand issues that are going on for them, to recognise problems that they have that perhaps they hadn't quite identified yet, and to work out the impact of that and educate them about solutions that are available. And when the time's right, you will offer them an opportunity to have a discussion about how they can get that solution solved.
And do you find that people by doing that, you've got to help people, they've got to find that solution almost. The questions will lead to them, like you say, find a solution, so because they buy into it more if they have come up with almost the answers.
The trick is to get them to do the work, to get them to identify the problem, get them to say. And the thing is, actually on my podcast the other day I had Chaz Anderson. He was talking about how statements create friction and how questions create solutions.
Yeah, and that's why I ask, and it's interesting because I listened. That's one of the podcasts I listened to. I thought it was really, really insightful, Clive. And the reason I'm asking that is with clients from the gym. You know, it's all about asking questions, seeing, and them coming up with, you know, what their goals are, the actions they'll need to achieve their goals. Them coming up with things they feel they can achieve, because anything else than that, if you're trying to steer them down a lane they're not ready to go down, it doesn't work. And this is, I suppose, so what, Brain Brawn, a bit. My podcast was that reason, linking the fitness and the business element. Everyone's in business and obviously I'm in fitness and stuff, so and bringing that in. So some of the principles that we might deal with clients are relevant in the business world. This questioning and guide and discovery.
And
no one wants to be. What I mean is, no one wants to be dictated to, do they?
No. And I think this is where we've got to stop being the salesperson, start being the consultant. Like you go to your doctors, your doctor is actually selling a solution.
Yeah.
But your doctor doesn't start by convincing you about the medication that he's got that could help you. He starts by asking questions and showing an interest. And even if he thinks he knows the answer when you first walk in, he's still going to check everything out first. And you have a conversation.
But that's a great analogy. That is a great reference, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being a doctor, the way they do ask questions and find out, and they just care. They want to help you.
Yeah. And that's all it is. It's about providing solutions to people's problems or things that they want in their lives. But you can't know what that is until you know who that person is and what's the drivers for them. And even if you think you do, I mean, I feel like I really understand my audience because I spent a lot of time getting to know people who are in the situation that I coach people in. But even if you think you know that person, it's important that you go through the process of showing an interest, having a conversation, and finding stuff out about them because they feel that, well, actually they have an interest in me rather than what they want to sell me.
Yeah. Totally. So challenges in business, we all have them, and every day is always challenges and stuff. But you have to overcome them, and actually, you can draw strength from that. So, as long as you learn from it and you're willing to grow. So, what challenges have you faced? How do you overcome those challenges, and obviously to keep moving forward?
There's always challenges. I guess
there's
always. And the thing is, sometimes it makes me feel like I'm quite a fraud because I haven't got my life sorted out. I haven't got my business sorted out. There's so many things I want to do and achieve.
Yeah, but that's people buy into that, Clive. That's just real life. That's human. No one's got it all going on. Even the top entrepreneurs and top business people have their insecurities and issues, and anything less than that, it shows humility, and doesn't it? And stuff,
Exactly.
But
I think there's I suppose one of the big challenges for me right now is content development because, as you know, creating a podcast itself is quite a big endeavour, and I'm also creating online courses. There's a lot of learning and worksheets and training to be developed for my masterminds and for the various things that I do. So content creation takes me a lot of time, and at the same time, obviously, I've got to service my clients and everything else that I need to do. So that's one of my biggest challenges. And I think that when it comes down to anything with time, I think what you need to do is to find ways. One of the things that I teach my clients is that every week, take a look at what you're doing and identify one thing that you can shift off your plate. And that might be as simple as unsubscribe from emails, or to create a template of an email that you do lots, or to put in an automation, or it could be a lot of things. But every week, find one thing that you can shift off your plate.
So does automation help that for you? And is one thing, is this like, when you shift it off, is it being able to delegate it? What if you're a one-woman band, as it say? How do you do that? Is it going to be automation? Because that's
automation is something that usually businesses come to in a little while into having run their business. It's not a straightaway thing because it means you've got to spend out on things. And if you just start your business, you're obviously looking to keep things as lean as possible. But automation, any kind of thing that gets things off your plate is really great. And I think one of the first things to do is to look for people who can shift things off your plate. So I have an assistant, and I very rarely book things in my diary. And so she manages my diary for me, and although this sounds like an expense, what I tend to find is that if you ask me for time, because I know you, and because I like you, I will give you that time, even when it's at a time that's inconvenient to me. Because I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah.
And I want to be liked. But if I give that to my assistant, then she knows that because I have time scheduled out, blocked out, where that is for client time and that is for seeing people. And she will just book you into one of those slots because she doesn't care. She doesn't have that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the ways. But, you know, even if you're just starting out, then maybe it is about, okay, what do I not need to do? Or, you know, can I just create a system out of this?
Yeah, so I heard you say on a podcast when I listened to it the other day, and it's a really good thing. You speak about self-discipline, okay, a lot, and made some really good points on a podcast I heard. And the other thing that you spoke about is time wasting. So what we'll do is we will focus on the small, easy tasks, which generally is firefighting in a business.
Yeah.
And we don't focus on the real big task that's going to generate revenue or have an impact on your business. So I think it's very interesting you saying that, and I'd like to hear more about what you know, how the importance of self-discipline to you, what that sort of looked like, and why people do that, don't they? They'll do this silly little task. And I know with you say with journaling, we do journaling, hit your 3 targets, but make them important. You know, and I speak from first hand. This is thing I've got better at and better at, and you know, I'm always trying to strive to get better. Is I now make sure my top 3 tasks get done early in the day or at a productive time where I know I'm productive to nail them, because then the day's a win.
Yeah.
Whatever happened in the day, it's a win. So so self-discipline, I'd love to hear more about that and the importance you place on.
Yeah, I think that you're right. It does start out by recognising what the most important things are, the things that actually create an impact. Most of what we do on a daily basis is really a waste of time. It's busyness. And I think what we have to ask ourselves is, the fundamental difference between busyness and productivity is, what do you actually create? You know, is there an end result with this? And there's many a times where I look back at my time and I think, do you know what, I've been busy today, I've been doing a lot of things, but I haven't actually got much to show for it. And then I realised, I've been busy, not productive.
How will you measure? How are you measuring your productivity? Obviously, I know there are some key KPIs definitely, but you know, revenue for example. Is there a certain measurement tools?
That's an interesting question. I think the thing is, it comes back to, first of all, identifying what those key things are and knowing what the priorities are in your business. So if you run a small business, you have 3 priorities when you first start out and 4 priorities when you're deeper in. Priority number 1. Get more clients. Get more clients. So anything that you do that will move towards creating a client is absolutely essential, and that should be one of your priorities. Whether that is to follow up with somebody from a networking event or to create a piece of copy for your podcast or whatever, then that's really important. Priority number 2 is service your clients. And priority 3 is anything else. Most people do it completely the other way around. They focus on the anything else stuff, like checking their social media and, you know, answering emails and things like that. And these things have to be done, but they don't move your business forward. So you have to recognise what those priorities are and then put them forward in the day. You have to find a necessity and the urgency to do it now.
Yeah. So I love, you know, the things you do, you know, obviously business owner, which we know we're getting that. So like sales training, coaching, business coaching, social selling, they're 3. So if I can talk about social selling and ask you the question, I take it that's around sort of social media and using that in the right way. Is that how you mean by that in content?
It is. It's about relationships. It's the thing is, it's really networking online. That's what we talk about with social selling. Also brings into the equation content marketing, so ebooks and things like that. Because usually what we need is some kind of way to give people some experience with us, to give people value as we warm that relationship up. So social selling is all about connecting with people, building a relationship, helping them understand the value that you might bring to their life, and that means having conversations, but having more tactical conversations. You don't start out to sell, but you do have to work out where you're at in any relationship and where you think that relationship might go. Does that make sense?
Of course, it's 100%. So with that connection you're making with people, say we're doing it online, do you have, there's an interest there, you see it's someone you could potentially work with, so do you have some free information providers like a PDF? Do you have like a sort of a system that you follow, or is it, which is not, it's generic a little bit in terms of everyone will get it, but it's not generic in the sense of the content is relevant to that person. So do you have like a bit of a system? Is there parts?
Well, yeah, and I think you create the system based on the people you're talking to. So, you know, it will start out, perhaps you meet, let's take LinkedIn, for example. You connect with somebody on LinkedIn or they connect with you. And then you start a conversation, say, well, you know, you get to know them a little bit. And then perhaps the next stage is to perhaps invite them to have a virtual coffee with you or something. Find out more about them, find out what's important to them. And then based on what they tell you are their issues, their problems, their challenges, things that are going on for them or what's important to them, then you might recommend a free resource. It might be one of your podcast episodes. It could be something else. Or if you haven't got anything, just listen to what your audience needs, wants and cares about, lies awake at night thinking about, and create something for them. So if you find consistently people are talking about, well, I'm really struggling to get leads in my business, create like a simple cheat sheet to, like, I don't know, 10 hacks for LinkedIn or whatever. So you give them a little piece of value, and then they've got that little experience for you. And then once you've got that, then you can invite.
I like your little cheat sheets. Yeah, it's good. I like it. It's good. You do it. Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, no, it's interesting. So, work, I know you're passionate about, which is as I said, it's been a general theme on my podcast, you know, people being passionate about the work. So when you're passionate, enjoy it, it doesn't feel like that work. But what do you do to relax away from work? Do you have anything?
Yeah, I've always been somebody with hobbies. And I've done a lot of hobbies over the years. Those hobbies have changed. But mostly it's family. It is family. I've got a dog, you know, I like to take him out, a really old grumpy basset hound. But I like to see family. I suppose I'd probably kill too much time on Netflix and things like that. But
you need a release though.
Yeah. And I used to spend a lot of time on computer games, but you know, they whilst they are great fun to play, they are just not productive in your life.
Time wasters.
They are real time killers, and so you know, I try to cut that down. I very occasionally, you know, get involved in with one of my boys, but you know, I just try to steer clear of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you have any personal heroes? Who are they, and why do you hold them in such high regard? I love what. Yeah, is there some people in your life that has inspired Clive or motivates Clive? You got any heroes?
Yeah, you know, some that you would not know, you know, managers and people that I've known in the past and friends. Robin Sharma comes to mind, actually. I don't know if you've ever heard of Robin Sharma. He's an exceptional guy, really is. He's a speaker and coach. And he wrote the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. It's incredible. It's written as a children's favourite.
Is it a good book?
It's a great book. It's a really good book. And it's very much about mindset and mindfulness.
What the book is?
The book is.
Yeah, I must get that.
It's superb book.
So the monk who sold
the monk who sold his Ferrari.
Okay.
Do check it out. It's a great book. Yeah. It's a great book. But he's somebody who's just exceptional with words. So, you know, I've followed people like Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar and all the usual speakers.
Great guy. They're brilliant. Them guys. Yeah.
They are.
Really good,
they are. And I like it when people study words. It's for me. It's, you know, I like to capture those snippets, those expressions.
But I think what inspires me with people like that, Jim Rohn, you mentioned there and stuff, is yes, they say the words, but there's serious action and their behaviour to match that, you know, and it's like that's important, you know. So yeah, they've got the words, but they're leading, they're inspiring people because they walk the walk and they talk to walk the walk, you know.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to being a student of influence. You know, that's what interests me. You know, marketing, business, leadership is all about influence, and these people, the Robin Sharmas, the Jim Rohns of the world, they are people who aren't just spouting some quote that they like, that they saw on the internet. They are people who are looking for ways to influence others in a positive way. And so, yeah, they're a student of language or a student of influence.
Yeah, no, it's great. So they're your main sort of heroes, I suppose? Yeah, no, it's really good. So, I wanted to ask you, because obviously sales being one of the element and your approach to selling is I think, similar to me, the way it is. What you got? Top 3 sales tips you can share? What 3?
Top 3 sales tips. There's loads of things. Number 1 is do your work, like do your homework. So if you're going to meet with somebody, check them out first. It really doesn't take time at all to go on somebody's website, to do a search,
I agree.
Find out about them so that when you turn up, you actually, you can mention the fact, well, hey, I saw that you used to be a footballer, or you saw you did this, or you did that, or whatever. Yeah. And you've immediately, you've got things that you can connect over, and it shows that you've just done that little bit of work.
You're valuing the person's time, aren't you? It's like today, I really appreciate you driving out to come to the gym and us to have the chat here today, and I really value that time. You're a busy man, so yeah, and so you got to, haven't you?
You've got to,
absolutely. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Great, so that's one.
Okay, so another one would be know what it is that people really want, because what you sell isn't necessarily what people want to buy. I'll give you an example here. Is that one of my clients at the moment is a guy called Tony, who's a mortgage advisor, very good at what he does. And when he first started to speak to me, my first thought was, oh, well, he's growing his business at the moment, he probably wants more sales. That's one of the major drivers why people want to work with me. And so I sat down with him and we had a chat, and he was his wife there as well. And very quickly on, I realised that actually sales was not his motivator. What I heard him talk about a lot is the fact that he'd been running his business for quite some time, and he was very good at what he did, and he was really, really crazy busy, and he felt like he was spinning plates. What he wanted was control in his business. He didn't want more sales because he was really good at generating more sales. There's no way I could have added more value. Well, maybe I could, but from his perspective, there's no way I could have added more value on that, that side of his business. It was more about, well, okay, so how can I now scale my business and free myself up so I don't feel like I'm about to screw up somewhere? This is a very, very capable guy. He wanted control in his business. But if I'd have gone in selling what I thought I was going to sell, which is, well, this is, do some sales training or marketing training with me, then I would have lost the sale, and we would have disengaged very, very quickly.
Do you find that's hard? Business owners, business people you're dealing with, it's hard. They are just hardwired. This is my services, and that's what they sell. Because that's great intuition, and that's really valuable. And actually, you giving that to someone is really interesting. But I'm sure not everyone will do that.
No, I think. Yeah, I think this is where
does that come down to questioning then, Clive?
It does. You have to put on the brakes and you say, okay, look. Obviously, you've come to me for a reason today. From my point of view, I just want to find out what's going on for you. What your issues are, and whether us working together makes sense. So I'll be doing a lot of listening right now. So tell me where you're at.
Brilliant.
It's where are you at now? Where do you want to be, and where do you need to be?
So that's two. Got a third? I know you said you've got quite a few. Can you share a third?
I suppose the third one would be about have a system, have a process. Scripts are great if you're going to a sales meeting, whatever. Having a script is great because you've had the chance to write things down and work out what you're going to say. But I think frameworks are better, and that what people want, if you're in a sales meeting with them or anywhere, what people want is leadership. And so what you want to do is work out what is the path that you're going to take them through in this, in your discussion today. If you don't lead, it will end up in a very weak, ineffectual conversation. You'll talk about the weather and everything else like that, and then you'll end up walking away and they'll think, oh, he's a nice guy, but I'll never do business with him. Or the other way around it is that you go in and, because you're so intent on selling, that it's this thing that Chad on the podcast the other day said about showing up and throwing up. Is that it's all about, what I'm going to tell you. So instead what you want is a process. You want to map it down to, okay, maybe the first two or three minutes max is about rapport building. And then you want to get to the business. So you ask a transition question or make a transition statement and say, okay, look, I know you're busy and you've got a lot to do. I am busy too. Why don't we get down to it?
And I think people nowadays are busier, and time is more precious. So actually, people probably will appreciate that. Being quite honest, look, let's get down to business. This is what we're here to talk about. We're not here. Look, you'll build a rapport. I think you can build a rapport instantly with someone, don't you, within a minute to 2 minutes. But ultimately, the rapport will come through the connection, the questions, and the chat you're going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that by having a framework like that, and by you have to get to business quickly because people's time is precious. And by having a framework, what you want to know is that, say you've got 40 minutes with somebody, or 20 minutes, whatever it is. You want to know roughly where you want to be in that conversation and if you're on track.
So for you then, so just to summarise that last point you made, so for you, you will have an outcome you want to get from the meeting written down almost?
Yeah.
And then reverse engineer that in terms of questions that will lead to that. Is that your framework?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just go off whatever the conversation goes off, right?
I think you've got to know what the next stage in the buyer's journey is for them. Now, it might be that they're sales ready when you first meet them, because some people are. They ring you up and say, I'm looking for a business coach, I'm looking for a fitness trainer, whatever. So in that case, then, yeah, you might be looking to land the sale right there and then. But in most cases, it takes time to get there, and it's about a series of touch points. So what is the next logical step?
So Clive, I was just talking about framework. So with that, are you saying if you'll look at the outcome of the meeting,
Yeah.
and then reverse engineering that within your framework, some questions that's going to lead to that outcome with that person?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it starts by understanding what that outcome is. That outcome might be if somebody's phoned you and they're asking for a fitness coach, then they might be sales ready, so you might be looking for that sale. If not, it might be earlier in that relationship, so the outcome might be to set up a discovery call or even just an initial meeting with them. And so you've got to know what that outcome is. And sometimes it's helpful to have a fallback scenario. Is that, well, okay, if they're not ready for that, well, why don't you listen to one of my podcast episodes that talks about this? You get some value there, and we can check in a few weeks.
Great, so it's just having a bit of flexibility within the framework, so you,
it is.
adapt to that person.
It is. Yeah.
Great, no, it's really good. Couple more things I just want to ask you. So what would you tell Clive from 10 years ago, advice that 10 years ago that you'd help the current day, it would help him then?
I think we'd be here all day. I suppose the thing is, when 10 years ago, I was about to start my business. Or maybe a year in front, but I was definitely thinking about starting my business right then. And I spent a lot of time thinking about the products and the courses and the various different things that I would be doing. And I thought because I'd been running a department delivering coaching and training, that I thought that would be easy as a small business coach, because I thought I knew it all. How little did I know at that time? So one of the pieces of advice I would give myself is stop trying to create products and everything else. What you've got to do is you've got to go out and learn how to sell. You've got to learn how to influence people first of all, because that was the thing. Is I was creating products and courses and and things that, number one, people didn't want or need because I didn't know who my audience was. And number two, even once I'd created something, I couldn't sell it because I didn't know how. I didn't have the right mindset and I didn't have a framework to sell in. And so I think the thing is, you've got to learn how to influence people. And I think that's good advice for everybody. Like, no matter what you do, learn how to influence.
Would that save you a lot of time in those days? Yeah,
save loads of money as well.
But do you know what? This is where I never think mistakes are a bad thing, because I just think you learn from them. As long as you learn from them, experience comes through mistakes. You make mistakes and you learn from it. So it shapes you now. You're having these conversations, having good framework, meeting the mortgage guy you said the other day who. Maybe that 10 years ago, Clive wouldn't have known that. Maybe it's actually mistakes you've made that now allows you to have that question with someone like that to then get the business. So, good advice to that, Clive. But like you say, it made you a better person probably for it now. Yeah,
it's no point living in regret, but I think it is important to recognise what those lessons are.
Cool. Any words you live by or quotes?
We were talking about just before we started, actually. Start badly.
Can you elaborate on that? Because we didn't get a chance to really talk into it, and it sort of fascinated me saying that.
So what it is that, like, quite often we're thinking about, maybe it's starting a business or bringing in a new product or getting fit or whatever. It could be anything that we want to do in our life. And what we tend to do is we tell ourselves that we've got to be in the right position and the right frame of mind and have everything lined up and ready before we can make a start. Sometimes people say, I've got to be sufficiently motivated. You haven't. Motivation is not a prerequisite for action. It helps, but you just have to start. And if you don't know the plan, just start somewhere, because the next step reveals itself. Once you make a start, the next step reveals itself. And if you fail to start, then, of course you don't fail. You don't make any progress. And then before you know, you say, well, I'll wait until the summer, I'll wait until this, I'll wait until that. That time ticks on, and then you get to that, these new places, and it's, well, I'm not ready yet. I've got to get more things lined up. Start today. Start badly.
Great advice, Clive. I will put in the notes how people can find you. So if you could just, but anyway, what have you got coming up? Business-wise, you can share where people can find you on socials and websites, etc. If you could just let me know.
Yeah,
Let everyone, listeners know.
I'm on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I've got a group on Facebook called Earning the Right. You can find me on my podcast. You can send me an email, clive@getrealaboutbusiness.com. What I've got coming up, I'm running some masterminds at the moment, some business masterminds, small little groups of people who are coming together, get my input as a business coach, plus work with other people, all growing their business, get help and support around your business. And later on in the year, I'll be bringing in a new course called Sales Autopsy. So if you want to learn about sales, if you want to get support growing your business, I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, that's great. Really great stuff, Clive. And I think just from my perspective, thanks so much for coming down today. I think since we connected, seeing the stuff you do, I really wanted to get you on. I mean, we chatted last week about it, didn't we? So thanks for coming down, sharing your insights, sharing your knowledge. It's been a really great podcast. And for those listening, because I spoke about your podcast at the start. For anyone listening, you've got to listen to your podcast because you're sharing some really good stuff on that, mate. So keep it going. And thanks for coming down.
Awesome.
Cheers, mate.